everyone. The Indian Society of International Law is honored to present a special lecture on maintenance of international peace and security by the esteemed Professor Syros. Sir is a distinguished fellow at the Center for Military History and Conflict Studies at United Service Institution of India, bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to this critical subject. First of all, we would like to invite Dr. Narendra Singh Sir, our Secretary General Sir, to please kindly felicitate Professor Syros with a bouquet. And I would also request our Vice President Sir, Dr. G.V. Rao Sir, to present the publication of Society to Professor Syros. I would now like to invite Dr. Mohit Gupta from Faculty of Law, UPES, to moderate this session, and he has been instrumental in the organization of this lecture. So we would like to... Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasant duty of welcoming our guest, Professor Syros, today. He's a distinguished professor with such a, eminent achievements, and has been a global. If there's a global academic that I've known in recent times, who has done work in all parts of the world, in all universities, I would say Professor Syros is one of them. And it's very nice to know that he wants to live in India and has been living here for the last 2 years and working in India. There's no doubt his achievements are so phenomenal that Dr. Mohit Gupta will read them out to you. And may I now welcome our Justice Satish Chandra, who is also an expert in international law and former judge of the Allahabad High Court, and our other distinguished guests here. And of course, we are online so that everybody can view this event. I'll invite Dr. Mohit Gupta to introduce the speaker.
Thank you very much for inviting Professor Syros Vasileios to this event. Professor Vasileios Syros is a distinguished fellow at the Center for Military History and Conflict Studies at the United Service Institution of India. Professor Syros is a life member of Clare Hall, University of Cambridge, and holds concurrent appointments as a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for European Global Studies at the University of Basel, Switzerland, and the Director of Early Modern Greek Culture Program at the Medici Archive project, which is in Florence, Italy. His areas of interest include the history of medieval and early modern political thought, which includes Christian, Islamic, and Jewish traditions, cross-cultural leadership, and Indian strategic thought in particular. Professor Syros received his PhD in medieval and modern history from the University of Heidelberg, conducted postdoctoral research at the university, which is in Sorbonne, and was appointed docent in political history at the University of Helsinki. He has held research positions and fellowships at Harvard University, Princeton University, and Columbia University, the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Michigan, the University of Notre Dame, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the Waseda Institute of Advanced Study, Waseda University, which is in Japan, and the Academy of Finland. Professor Syros served as full professor and Greek chair, sponsored by Government of Hellenic Republic at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He previously taught over there, and apart from it, he has been at Stanford University, McGill University also, the University of Chicago, the École des Hautes Études and Sciences Sociales, which is in Paris, and the University of Navarra, which is in Spain. He has also led Davis Visiting Professor at the Hebrew University, which is in Jerusalem, a Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences, Visiting Professor at Radboud University, Nijmegen, and a Descartes Senior Fellow at the Utrecht University. So all these accolades are there with Professor Syros, and you know that present world is marked by a number of conflicts and the war situation that is going on in Europe and Asia and also in Africa. So Professor Syros will highlight the current issues involved in the maintenance of international peace and security. So I welcome Professor Syros for this lecture.
Would you like to address it from here? Yeah, all right. Over to Professor Vasileios.
Ex-Vice President, Dr. Rao, and Dr. Gupta, thank you very much for the invite. It's a great pleasure for me to be in this very illustrious company of great experts in law. I'm an expert on. I'm an expert in history, not in law, but I did work in law. I did work on law in the past as a medievalist. I did a lot of natural law. I did some stuff on the law of the sea. I was recently in Turkey, in Istanbul, for a course on the history of the law of the sea for NATO borders and maritime security. So I sympathize with the agenda of the society, and I'm very happy to be here. I'll be happy to share my thoughts about these topics with you, and I will appreciate your feedback, your criticisms, your input. These are all very important topics that affect the entire world, not just Greece or India. And so my presentation has three segments, three parts. The first part is about the current landscape, the current challenges and conflicts that have been tantalizing the world in the past 2-3 years, and of course they've been affecting Europe. Yeah, sure. Affecting Europe and global security. The second part is a very important chapter in India-Greece relations. It's the nascent India-Greece partnership that's been propelled over the past 2-3 years. And I've been kind of somehow indirectly involved in this big project. It's a historical project, and I have to say that although I do believe that I'm a global citizen, my greatest achievement is not going to Oxford University, outline, but being in India, because this is a great school for me, great experience, and I feel I'm also in a very critical phase of my professional life and career that I can absorb and digest the lessons, insights I derive from this wonderful country's civilization. So I'm very grateful to be in this country, and of course I always cherish the opportunity to share my knowledge and receive feedback from such events. The third segment of my presentation is about India's role in the world. India, of course, is becoming a very important power right now, and the whole chapter, the whole partnership with Greece is a corollary of India's ascent in the global arena. So I'd like to see how I, as a Greek scholar, as a historian, look at India's contribution to international security and what India can contribute or cannot contribute when it comes to global affairs and international security. So I should say that I'm a Greek-Finnish national, so I have my own perspectives on security from the two edges of Europe, from Greece and Finland. Of course, Greece, as you know, has its own geopolitical challenges. Turkey has been a great issue when it comes to recent history and international relations. And the law of the sea is, of course, a thorny question that concerns the Aegean Greece's borders. Finland, on the other hand, where I lived for the past 10-15 years, and I'm a very proud Finnish national, Finnish citizen, has had problems with Russia and recently joined NATO. So right now in Europe we're confronted with two major challenges. One is the Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war, and Europe has been trying to respond to this war. The war has affected the economies of Europe. We're facing an enormous crisis in different parts of Europe. And the second conflict is, of course, the Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East. As you know, the Prime Minister of Iran was recently killed. So this is an ongoing conflict. So these two conflicts have affected the way people look at international security and the way Europe tries to respond as a bloc, the EU in particular, to those questions. And it seems that And in a sense, we're entering a new phase when it comes to international relations, how the EU faces, confronts these problems. And we're having the emergence of new blocks of states or powers, conglomerates of different powers that try to engage with these issues. In a sense, we don't have a Cold War in the classical sense. We don't have two blocks, two states, two big powers controlling the game. We don't have the US versus the Soviet Union, but we have a multipolar world. And these conflicts have showcased, somehow have underlined the importance and contribution of other nations that can be very instrumental in securing global peace. Recently, the Greek Prime Minister visited India for 3-4 days, and that was an important visit to reciprocate Prime Minister Modi's visit to Greece this past summer in August. So the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, visited Delhi, and he was very positive about India's contribution to international affairs and international peace. He didn't mention in his speech that India could resolve the war in Ukraine, which I think is another second, because I don't think India is interested in resolving the war in Ukraine, and I don't think India has the power, the leverage to resolve the war in Ukraine. But India does have the soft power and the tools to facilitate the process of finding a kind of resolution to this big conflict. It seems that the conflict will go on for a number of years. I don't see any solution in the foreseeable future. The economies of Europe have suffered a lot from this conflict, and of course the Europeans cannot have the tools to respond to the crisis. That is because also Europe is heavily dependent on Russian gas and oil. So Europe hasn't been able to articulate, to create, to forge its own defense, its own energy resources that would help Europe be kind of emancipated from Russia's resources. On the other hand, the war in the Middle East, the war between Israel and Hamas, again, is a major conflict. We have different players being involved in this war. The U.S. is, of course, a major actor. And this war has, of course, affected certain things in the Eastern Mediterranean. When it comes to India, for example, as you know, the Indian government has this great, ambitious project of creating IMEC, a corridor that will connect India by the Middle East with Europe. And of course, the war in Israel, the Israel-Hamas war, has had important ramifications when it comes to IMEC and how IMEC will unfold in the coming years. So the question is to what extent this project, this agenda is viable in this constellation, to what extent the IMEC project will be able to kind of bypass these conflict scenarios in the Middle East and focus on Greece and Europe. I've heard different stories about IMEC and how the current situation in the Middle East affects the future of IMEC. On the other hand, IMEC is frozen effectively because right now everybody is involved in this conflict, everybody's trying to find a solution to this conflict, and it's not a doable project. On the other hand, there is another reading of the situation that IMEC will go on, will be executed, and that certain nations, Greece and Israel, are keen to promote this project. Of course, this is not a simple project because it involves land, sea, etc. It's not a smooth project. And of course, there will also be very important challenges when it comes to Turkey's, for example, reaction to this project. As you know, Turkey has also been quite negative when it comes to IMEC because it feels that it has been sidelined, marginalized from this whole project. So Turkey, Azerbaijan, and other nations are also kind of very sensitive to when it comes to IMEC and India's connectivity to access to Europe. Now, India is, of course, I'm sure we all know that India is a great power, but India is still presented as a middle power. And of course, India has no way to go when it comes to certain things like infrastructure, like soft power, public diplomacy. But India is becoming a major partner and a major player in the international arena. India has, of course, the leverage, the tools, the resources, and most importantly, the institutional DNA to respond to this problem, to these questions. So, one thing that I find very important when it comes to diplomacy, the international affairs, is India has been trying to forge links to Greece and Europe. It is a new chapter, thanks of course to the EMEA, the current government, a new chapter in this kind of conversation of dialogue between Europe and India. So in a sense, India has rediscovered Europe, Europe is discovered India, and we're having a new process of soul searching, in a sense, and mutual understanding that is very important when it comes to India-EU relations. Yesterday we hosted a lunch at Taj Mahal with Professor Rajkumar, the VC of Jindal Global University. We had a number of professors, journalists, some experts from Jindal, and we had 3 ambassadors. We had the Polish ambassador, the Cyprus High Commissioner, and someone from the EU delegation. We talked a lot about this very interesting kind of chapter in EU-India relations. And one of the points that emerged from this lunch, it was a closed-door lunch, is that actually we do have Indians going to Europe, to the west, right? India is, of course, a big country. Greece is just about 10 million people, which is a neighborhood of Delhi, the Green Party House has, but India is a big country. But go to Europe, go to the west, but Europeans don't come to India. So we're trying to address this problem, this and create a better equation when it comes to the bilateral relations between EU and India. And of course, one of the desiderata for the future is creating a new project, a platform that will facilitate the immersion of European students, scholars, and try to drive them to propel them to come to India. Because of course, we have tripartite dialogue, we have government-to-government conversations and negotiations, but we also have a very important pillar in this dialogue, which is track 2, how people talk, NGOs, different agencies, and how they So this symmetry is reflected in the Greek case. I recently gave a talk at the IDSA about the prospects and challenges of the EU, of the Greece-India partnership. And the problem is that we do have 15,000 Indians living in Greece, permanent residents, workers, but we only have 15 Greeks living in India. So the question is, how do you have a sustainable, viable, convincing track to dialogue if you don't have a rich, strong diaspora that can facilitate this kind of conversation and encounters between the two nations? Because of course, we do have governments, we do have NGOs, we do have different modes of disseminating information about India in Europe. But we also have mostly people on the ground, soldiers in a sense, that can push this thing forward. So, in a sense, over the past 2-3 years, Greece and India have had a very important encounter when it comes to civilizational linkages, when it comes to their role in the international arena, and of course, the strategic dialogue is a very important selling aspect of this new chapter in India-Greece relations. Now, in India, of course, we know a lot about Sikandar, about the kingdoms in the Indian kingdoms, etc. That's the ancient part. There's the medieval part, which is the translation, the circulation of Greek learning in medieval India through translations from Arabic and Persian from Greek into Arabic and Persian. We have a modern chapter, which is again very intriguing, very interesting when it comes to the Greek community in Kolkata. Another very important figure is Vasileios Galanos, who was essentially the founder of Indology in Europe. He was a Greek teacher who was in Constantinople in Istanbul. At some point, a merchant convinced him to go to Kolkata to teach Greek to the community. And then Galanos stayed in India, he came to India. And then he died in Varanasi after many years, translating Kautilya into Greek. So we have here a very important foundational figure of Indology in a Greek scholar who actually translated the Indian classes into Greek. And of course, we have other chapters in this very complex and very rich history of India-Greece encounters. We have Indian soldiers fighting in Greece, both in World War Wars. And right now, with the USI, we're trying to erect a new monument for the Indian soldiers who died in Salonika, northern Greece, to honor their contribution to the war. And we do have also a great battleship that was stationed in Mumbai in 1941-1942, an iconic battleship, like Georgios Severov. And we have archives, we have photos, diaries, and travelogues by Greek soldiers about this ship. So we do have encounters throughout the history between Greece and India. But in a sense, we have a very sustained effort right now to promote this very important conversation and dialogue between Greece and India. And we have seen a number of exchanges and visits over the past two years by high-profile officials between the two nations. One was 2001, Prime Minister Dendias, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Dendias came to Delhi, then we had Prime Minister Modi going to Greece in August, Prime Minister of Greece came to Delhi in February, and in March, but also the signing of the first MOU and memorandum between the two, between the the armies, Indian Greek armies, that was signed by the chief of staff of Greece, who came to Delhi in April. So we do have a number of high-profile visits that attest to the new awareness of these countries about the importance of this partnership. The question is to what extent this thing will affect international affairs and how this new partnership between India and Greece can be a game changer in the Middle East, Mediterranean, and Europe. So India, when it comes to international affairs, is looking to have a footprint in Europe, and especially the Eastern Mediterranean. And of course, one of the major topics that's been discussed in these encounters and visits is India's having access to a Greek port. As you know, Greece is a maritime country, has a number of ports and islands. The Chinese control, at this point, Syros, which is Greece's biggest port in Europe, one of Europe's most important ports. So the question is, how does India fit the picture? And what's India's perspective role in this equation? I've been writing a paper for collaboration with a colleague from IDSA about the different alternatives, different ports Greece can offer to India when it comes to India's access to the Mediterranean and in Europe. There are 10, 15 ports with pros and cons, but they're all very important footholds for India to enter the European space. And I do believe that in 2-3 years from now, India will have secure access to the Greek ports. This is very important because India is trying to enhance, increase its footprint in Europe. India wants to export things to Europe, and of course we have a very strong presence in Israel, the Haifa port, in the Adani family controls the port. So something similar could be replicated when it comes to Greece, and India wants to export. This is a very important thing. Number two is that Europe is facing demographic decline. That, of course, is a major concern for most European nations. Greece itself is facing a tremendous demographic decline, Finland, etc. So one of the major aspects of this partnership is trying to import labor from India to Greece, and having a more sustained, more comprehensive regime that will facilitate visas, etc. in Greece and India. We no longer need to have illegal workers. We want to have a systematic framework that can enable Indian workers to go to Greece, and this is, of course, a very important chapter in this new partnership. Now, there are very important challenges when it comes to this partnership, and of course there are ramifications, implications when it comes to security. One is that there is no consensus within the Greek government about how will the army will perform, how will proceed with India. So there are 2 or 3 different actors within the Greek government that have their own perspectives of this partnership. And as far as I know, there's no consensus when it comes to the future of this India-Greece partnership. Number 2 is that we do have a very strong presence of Pakistan's intelligence services in Europe, and especially in Greece. We had a number of incidents over the past 2-3 years of Pakistani nationals trying to bomb synagogues in Greece. So, as you understand, the big elephant in the room is to Pakistan. This is, of course, a major concern for both nations. But I was recently in Greece for a lecture of the War College. I got about 250, 300 officers attending the lecture about the Greece-India partnership. And I did tell them that we need to look beyond this very myopic perspective of approaching India just because Greece has problems with Turkey. Because Turkey and Greece have their own problems, and Greeks think that because India has problems with Turkey, Greece will side with India. So, in a sense, this is an old doctrine emanating from Kautilya, that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But Greece should look beyond this framework and approach India in a more constructive, comprehensive manner. So one of the problems I see in Greece right now when it comes to security and understanding of India is that we don't have, for example, a chair dedicated to Indian studies. And I've been trying hard with the Embassy of Greece in Delhi and the Indian Embassy in Athens to create an ICCR chair at the University of Athens, which makes sense. Vasileios, a Greek scholar who was in Varanasi, gave his property for the establishment of the University of Athens, and creating a sustained Syros ICCR chair dedicated to India. Because we talk a lot about India, about cuisine, about yoga, about Bollywood, but we don't have a center or a platform in Greece that will promote the serious academic research on India. This is number one. Number two is that also Indians lack the information and the knowledge about Greece. I mean, we do have Greeks who are genuine, we do have some nationals like myself who try to disseminate things about Greece, but we do need to have a more sustained conversation when it comes to Greece-India relations. So I think that this whole strategic partnership is very important. I mean, there's interest in India. The Prime Minister was accompanied by at least 100 businessmen that came to India to explore opportunities for exporting their goods to India. But we do need to have a very strong solidational underpinning to this effort that will bring these two nations together. Now, one of the things I realized in India, and I'm very appreciative of, and now we're in the lecture period, is how deeply ingrained democracy is in this country. So I would say that coming from Greece, which is of course a part of democracy, I realized that there is another version of democracy, which is being a democracy, and that's a very appealing, very interesting variant of democracy. So for me as a Greek national, coming from a country which is very small, 10 million people, observing, witnessing how democracy works in India, how the legislation works, and how this whole process unfolds, is a very interesting experience. What I find very interesting, that both countries are firmly dedicated to democracy for their own reasons. They're firmly dedicated to national law, like UNCLOS, for example. But we do have a very vigorous democracy when it comes to India. Of course, there are problems, there are anomalies in every system. But I find that Indians have a very deeply embedded, ingrained sense of democracy that is manifested also in everyday conversations. When I was at JNU, for example, we had conversations with students, with colleagues about major political affairs, and people would express their opinions. This is a very refreshing view that makes me very optimistic when it comes to the future of democracy in this country, and India becoming actually a new model when it comes to global affairs and the implementation of democratic ideals and principles. Now, again, we talked about these things with Raj Kumar yesterday in that lunch we had in America. The U.S. has its own problems right now. We've been talking a lot about the decline of the West, of the U.S. I'm not sure if the U.S. is declined, it has major problems, but of course, India provides a very interesting counter-model to the Western democracy that is shaped and colored by Indians' immense diversity. I mean, India, of course, the U.S. is a country with diversity, Europe has its own diversity, but I never experienced a country in the world that has so much diversity and is able to tackle diversity in such a constructive way. Of course, there are problems, as we all know, diversity is a major issue, and Europe has had tremendous problems when it comes to diversity. Right now, we have migrants, we have interreligious conflict in Europe, and India can provide a very interesting model of how we can tackle those challenges, how we can address and harness diversity, cherish diversity within a very important democratic framework. So, one of the projects we have at the USI, which is, as you know, India's oldest and premier think tank, international affairs and security affairs, is called UPHAV, which means revolution in Sanskrit. And this project, which was initiated last year, is sponsored, is created by the USI in collaboration with ARTRA, the Army Training Command, which is in Shimla. We've had a number of events over the past 2 years about Greece, India, Uzbekistan, and Mongolia, the Silk Road. We had another event last year about India and Greece and Western Bridges. We had the Mill Festival, Winter Festival in October, a huge event on the Maharashtra Center, where I had the honor to talk about India's soft power and new readings of the Indian classics. And just yesterday we had another very important event in the National Museum, where we presented a book, the proceedings of the deliverables, the papers of this project. So this project might sound a bit obsolete when it comes to the classes, because nowadays we all talk about modern affairs, modern sources, but India has a very rich tradition of classes. as does Greece. So the question is, to what extent can we derive lessons and insights from India's very rich heritage of classics, of ancient political thought, statecraft, strategic leadership when it comes to international affairs? And I do believe that if we go back to the classics, if we go back to those ancient sources, we might be able to, number one, to derive important insights when it comes to security, leadership, because these are all perennial questions. These are all questions in the history of political thought, statecraft, leadership, that has preoccupied different nations across the centuries. So we have a set of questions, of core questions, that are central to different traditions, like good ruler, justice, good government. These are all very important questions. And India has had, of course, its own contribution when it comes to these questions, as Greece, because Greece also boasts as a very important classical legacy. So in this project, we're trying to see how we can promote the new interpretations of the Indian classics, and how we can make them relevant, how we can render them relevant to India's position in the world. And I think that I recently had presented a paper on this topic. And we, in the West, at least, we talk a lot about Thucydides, Peloponnesian War. This is one of the major sources for military training, for leadership. And of course, we also talk about Sun Tzu, the famous Chinese strategist, when it comes to hierarchies of power. These are, of course, military readings. But one thing that surprises me is that we don't talk much about, for example, Kautilya, who has a very rich, has a very rich treatise on international affairs and strategy and political affairs. But we're oblivious to the importance of this very important Indian strategist, political thinker, when it comes to military training and education and leadership. So I've been trying a lot with my lectures in Greece and other countries to talk about Kautilya and showcase the importance of Maharashtra when it comes to leadership, political affairs, and statecraft. I was recently talking to a colleague in the US about soft power, and he told me that almost every military academy in the university talks about Sun Tzu, the Chinese political thinker, and even in his university, they have a big study of Sun Tzu. So the question is, why isn't the West appreciative of the importance of Indian classics, number one? Number two, what India could do to promote the study of the Indian classics and thereby enhance its soft power in the world. Because ultimately, when we talk about soft power, as opposed to hard power, we talk about the ability of a nation, of a state, to promote its agenda, its ambitions and aspirations through different means that don't involve state powers. Hard power operates on the basis of sanctions. Hard power is army, economy, but soft power is a subterranean, subtle form of power that can influence, that can shape, that can help modify the convictions and ideas of other nations when it comes to our own image. So what can India do to project its image in the world by enlisting, by harnessing the Indian classics? And this is one of the major questions I've been dealing with at the US side, and in particular in this project, UPHA, when it comes to India's role in the international arena. So what I propose to the US side, and of course we're still debating these questions, I think these are all very important questions, and there's a lot of food for thought when it comes to addressing these problems, is that India could have a system of concentric circles, using mathematical expression here, metaphor, to promote the Indian classics. So the core would be the set of classical sources in the Indian traditions, like Kautilya, Bharata, etc., Sakraniti, and there will be layers in this very complex system of concentric circles that could relate to the Indian classics. For example, the next circle would be Greece. Greek classics in conversation with India. The next layer would be China. And one would keep adding different layers that would enhance dialogue between the Indian tradition of the classics and other traditions. Now, I think that, in a sense, if we are able to talk about international affairs and international security and engage with Indian sources like Kautilya, we might have a better, more comprehensive approach to these questions. And I do believe that Kautilya actually provides, and I'm not saying it because I'm in India, but I do believe that Kautilya provides a very rich arsenal, repertoire of concepts, of tools, analytical approaches that can help us address different questions when it comes to international affairs. Now, this is, of course, a very important aspect of this Greece-India partnership, because we talk about business, we talk about defense, but we have to also talk about academic affairs and how these two countries can rediscover and harness the strength that is enshrined in their classical traditions. Another issue I want to discuss here, and I'll be happy to receive your feedback. I know that this is a very controversial topic in India, is India's very complex relationship with NATO. As you know, Greece is both a NATO and EU member state, so in a sense, Greece is an important part of this kind of conversation between India and the West, these two blocks, EU and NATO. So the question is to what extent is India willing in this juncture to engage with NATO, and what can potential collaboration with NATO bring for India? Again, one of my talks, I claim that actually I do believe that NATO will profit more from India from NATO, because NATO is trying to expand its NATO plus right now. The Indo-Pacific is becoming one of the major concerns for NATO right now. So NATO is no longer a Western alliance, it's also moving eastwards. So India is in a sense an important part of this equation, an important pillar when it comes to security and global affairs in this part of the world. So NATO, by expanding its outreach and footprint in the Pacific, needs India in order to have a foothold in the region. And the question is, to what extent is India willing to offer to this whole project, and how India perceives India? I do believe that NATO has done a lot when it comes to, for example, hybrid threats, when it comes to China. So India could capitalize on certain things within NATO to address those concerns. And of course, China is the big elephant in the room, is a major security challenge for India and Pakistan. So I think that in a sense, India could possibly revisit its attitude towards NATO and see how it can capitalize upon certain things NATO can offer when it comes to those threats and hybrid threats. Number two is that NATO is also becoming more appreciative of India's role in the international arena. I've been invited to various NATO centers of excellence, which are the academic brain of NATO, just military stuff. And I realized that there's strong interest in India nowadays. That in every conversation, every presentation I gave, people were asking about India. People were curious about India. So in the sense that I feel that at this juncture, there's a very strong potential for rediscovering India in the West, appreciating India's contribution to international affairs. I do believe that we're entering a new phase of EU-India relations. As a Greek national, I'm very privileged to be able to observe, to witness this process on the ground, made in India. This is, of course, very important. I was talking to a friend of mine in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Greece, telling him that you're talking about India sitting in Greece, having coffee in Acropolis, which is very nice, but I'm in India, I'm on the ground, and I've been very privileged to observe things, the elections and everything, while being in India. So it's very different to talk about India when you sit in Athens in a nice coffee shop and talking about India, well, although you've never been to India, it's very different when you are in India, you're able to assess people, to talk to people, and gather information. So I think this is a very intriguing phase of EU-Europe relations. Of course, Greece is a major part of this equation. I do think that we as academics, as practitioners, as people who are interested in scholarship and history, can have a major contribution when it comes to this conversation. Again, we had a track record dialogue, which is very important. We had the political will to implement this partnership, but we also need people on the ground that can help promote track dialogue. I'd be happy to receive your feedback, your questions, your criticisms, your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Vasileios Syros. You have given such an enlightening talk. It's really heartening, and with your vast experience as a global academic, you've really highlighted the aspect that really requires some attention and which we've not had. Before I kickstart this discussion, let me tell you first thing. The founder of the Indian Society of International Law, Shri V.K. Krishna Menon, was the first Defense Minister of India. And he established this with others, and you have seen a bust of his, and he was also an international law expert. And also he took a serious interest in India's security issues, whether it was China or Pakistan or any of those. And courtesy him, I also spent my entire schooling in Army Public School, and I have a great understanding of Indian military affairs as well. Also, I have great love for Greece because I was a Rhodes Ocean Scholar in Rhodes, and I spent 6 long weeks in a very high profile program on law of the sea. So Greece is very dear to me as well, but also to all Indians. I'm a student of political science, and in our college we did all the Greek philosophers right through, and they are truly known to be the father of democracy. Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. And an amazing thought, all of which I read in detail and thoroughly remember and enjoyed it today. Another matter which you may feel happy, you have given some instances. The first Greek to come to India was Seleucus Nicator in the year 306 BC. He was sent by Alexander the Great to conquer India, and he lost to an Indian king called Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya defeated Seleucus Nicator, but to establish a lasting peace, Seleucus Nicator offered his daughter Helena in marriage to Chandragupta Maurya, and that marriage did take place. And it was in Patliputra that Seleucus Nicator came in, and that wedding took place. Of course, Alexander the Great was not very happy about that. I think he was traveling to India before he died of malaria or some liver disease, something like that, they were saying. So he was on his way, he wanted to come to India, and after such a long time, I think you are here, we are hearing you for the first time wanting to establish greater relations between India and Greece, and that's very, very heartening. And also, I come from a town which is a seaside town. My great-grandfather had 2 ships. He used to do trade with Sumatra and Java and all the way to Eden. And so I'm very close, shipping is close to my heart, and Greek shipping, as we know, has been a great contribution as well. Hopefully those are areas which we can think of. No doubt, militarily or any other fashion, to have a stronger relationship with Greece can only be very, very mutually beneficial, because it has history and it has great beauty of a place to visit. I mean, it gives us great joy even visiting Greece, and similarly you may be liking visiting India. We have 7,000 kilometers of the sea territory, and the beaches and etc., which we can look for developing shipping lines. So these are all very interesting aspects that you have spoken of, and you are working with Wing Commander Bakshi. Prof. Bakshi is a veteran of the Army, and he is also closely associated with all of what the USI and IDSA, etc. So, and Justice Satish Chandra is one of being our great international law experts, and all of them who are present here may want to comment or ask questions. So, would you like, Wing Commander Bakshi, please, may I invite you to.
Thank you very much, Chair, Professor Vasileios. I saw you yesterday also. I must say, you have invoked a lot of thoughts into our mind. There's no doubt about it that Greece and India have a lot of future from shipping downwards, let's say. But you brought out the question of NATO and the NATO's influx, NATO coming into East, Southeast. Now NATO's interest in South China Sea is quite natural, because NATO is, most of the countries of NATO are doing heavy trade, European Union in South China Sea, and all their vessels, the South Korea and Taiwan, etc., are being now subjugated by China. Their islands are being taken, their fishing rights are being taken. So I personally feel NATO will play a very important role, and so will India, because India has a double game with China on our border and also that way. So I personally feel, if that is so, how do you think, I'm asking a question, that how do you think NATO would approach India to get it interested, whether it will be through defense industry, whether it will be through trade, or probably one would what NATO offer honorary membership to India. Because North Atlantic Treaty Organization in South China Sea doesn't gel. So they will have to change their mental role somewhere. So I personally like to feel, how will this happen? Otherwise, trade and relationship with Greece is, no doubt about it, a very fine idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Syros, and happy to see you again after a year, almost a year. We met at the IDSA. I mean, you're right that. I don't think that India will become a member of NATO, and I don't think it would be beneficial for India to be part of NATO, honestly. But India can do business with NATO, and I think NATO is very interesting. As you said, there's a very strong economic interests and considerations when it comes to the South, to the Indo-Pacific. NATO, of course, is interesting. The major economic interests and concerns here. Now, I think that one sector which India can work together with NATO is defense industry. And of course, we'll be talking a lot also with Jonathan Dare and MOD about promoting defense industry in this sector in India and Greece, because this is a very important chapter in India and Greece partnership. You're right. Another thing is that NATO and India do have common threats. China, for example, is a major problem. The Red Sea. So these are all major threats that concern both India and NATO. And I think India and NATO can work together when it comes to addressing these threats. What I think that NATO could do in order to have a more appealing image in the region, because it's still very controversial, is that NATO could also work with the EU to promote this kind of collaboration between India and NATO. So, in a sense, the EU could be the front man when it comes to this country, because the EU is more kosher, more legit, right? But NATO would also be involved in this process, because I think that having NATO, having an embassy or satellite office of NATO in India would steer controversy. It didn't happen in Japan. So I think that NATO should employ more savvy ways and modes of designing itself in the region and modifying Indians by working together with the EU. And I think that would make the whole project more acceptable to the public opinion and also policymakers. I don't know if you agree.
Yes, I think we'll move around like this. Anwar, would you like to say? David before Dr. Mohit Gupta would like to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Syros, for such an enlightening lecture of you. I personally, when I look at that, in the aftermath of India's nuclear explosions in 1998, Greece was one of the first states which had signed an MOU with there was an MOU signed with Greece. It was the very first state in the entire European Union region. So, looking at that, and of course, India having glorious past relations in the ancient times, medieval times, I just want to know that why has it happened that India signed a strategic partnership with the Greek only in year 2023, August 2023, the first time that India entered into a strategic partnership with the Greece. What was the reason that it has been so delayed? This is my particular reference to the question that I wanted to.
It's a very good question. I think you're right that after the nuclear, which is
98.
98, Greece was one of the very few Western nations that was still very sympathetic to India and had the first MOU between India and Greece. I think that was a visit by MOD to Hanzopoulos. And this MOU signed in April, it's an extension, renewal of that. Now the question is that somehow India was never in the picture for a number of years, almost 30 years. We had Indira Gandhi's visit in Greece 30 years ago. And actually my uncle, Indira Gandhi went to Delphi for a visit. So my uncle, who is now 85, was a young boy. He met Indira Gandhi. He served her when she was in Delphi. So there's a nice picture of Melina Mercouri, the Greek Minister of Culture, visited Belfast. And the second high-profile visit was, of course, religious visit to Greece. No, so we had a hiatus of 30 years of no kind of interaction. And I think one of the reasons is that, number one, that people are becoming increasingly aware of China's very sinister role in international affairs. At some point, Greece was flirting with China, they took the ports, and of course, the Chinese were very smart, very shrewd and astute to capitalize upon Europe's deficiencies, the anomalies, the economic crisis, and the bulk ports, etc. And China's course has been very influential when it comes to hybrid warfare within Europe. So people realize that, okay, China is a major economic power, but China doesn't play fair game. So they have to, they're becoming increasingly aware of these very kind of sinister, dubious role of China in international affairs. Number two is that India is a country that shares a number of things with the West. Commitment to democracy, diversity, has a very important linkage with Greece, various linkages. So in a sense, India is a country where you can have a very important strategic partnership, and that is a very smooth process. You don't need to work hard. It's a low-hanging fruit in a sense to have this kind of strategic partnership with India, as compared to other countries where you have to work hard, pave the ground, and create additional capital to support to justify that enablement. On the other hand, I think that India is also becoming increasingly aware of the importance of Greece and Europe when it comes to international affairs. I mean, India, again, is reconsidering, revisiting its relationship with Europe. And of course, the corollary of this process is this new chapter in India-Greece relations. And I do think that, honestly, I don't think that Greeks per se are to be credited with this kind of rediscovery of India. I think that the major powers behind this whole project that are pushing this agenda. I mean, the US is, of course, a very important country that is, I think, trying to orchestrate or support this new recent partnership. The Greeks are becoming also aware of the importance of this partnership. But again, there are major powers, major stakeholders that are very interested in promoting this partnership. A very tangible example is the creation of a post of the Defense Industry of India in Greece. So at this point, there's a Defense Industry of India in Prague that is in charge of Greece. And recently, the MOD opened two new posts. One is in Poland, one is in Spain. And Greece will hopefully be the third new post of military attaché in Europe. We'll be lobbying for that. And hopefully we'll get somebody from the Indian Navy to represent India in Greece. So these are very small but practical steps and measures that will be conducive to building up, to expanding this kind of partnership. So I would say that the major reasons why Greece came closer to India is, number one, that people are no longer in love with China. This whole thing has been dissipating. And at some point they had this epiphany. They realized that India could be actually a more reliable partner for Europe and Greece as compared to China. Number two is that also people are becoming aware of India's very distinctive contribution when it comes to international affairs and democracy.
Yeah.
Should we ask the lady at the back? Would you like to ask some questions or comment? Do you want a mic? Can somebody carry a mic from here? We'll send a mic.
Yeah, I'll speak.
Yeah, anybody either?
It's fine, sir. I think
All
I'm
right.
audible.
Yeah, oh, you come on. All right. Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting us, Professor Rao. And it's been a wonderful journey being associated with ISIL, and especially the lectures like what we are, hearing today. Thank you so much for inviting us, and I would like to thank the society as well as the speaker for actually enlightening us the relationships what we have with Greece. It's a wonderful country, and what our Prime Minister is doing these days is again what we are looking forward to in building relationships with countries, especially country like Greece. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else? Arman, would you like to say make a comment or ask a question? Please feel free. And then quickly, of course, I'm going to leave Dr. Narendra Singh and Justice Ravi Chandra for the last word. But
Quick, come on.
I could catch up some of the things from the lecture, but generally war is no longer an instrument of foreign policy in today's world. There was a time when acquisition of territory and cession of territory was the idea, but this it doesn't exist. Greece has been a power,
Speak into the mic,
of course. But
Closer.
But in modern era, we see that Greece is not a significant economic power when we compare it to other European countries like Germany, France, UK. So it has not been able to push its foreign policy and its agenda in other parts of the world, isn't it? So how in future, like how you see that the Greece would be able to play a significant role and can get in touch with India and other like-minded powers, democratic states to push the agenda of equitable international system. That's it.
That's a great comment. I mean, Greece survived a major economic crisis, and we still fail in resolve this crisis in Greece. Implication of this very important crisis in various sectors. And Greece doesn't have the economic powers to impose the agenda, pushing the agenda. And a good classic example is recently we had a couple of days ago actually. It was the new president of North Macedonia, sworn. And although Greece and North Macedonia have this Republic have an agreement to use the term North Macedonia, she used the term Macedonia, so it's against the constitution, against the agreement. Another problem is of course Turkey. I mean, this is a perennial problem for Greece. To break the relations is a very important problem for Greece. Albania is another country which has now its own agenda and doesn't show due respect to Greece. So in a sense, Greece hasn't been able to impose its agenda and enjoy the respect it deserves as both an EU and NATO member state. And I think one of the reasons is that you're right that the economic crisis is tarnished Greece's image in the world. As a Greek national being in Northern Europe, I was often on the receiving end of different comments and derogatory criticisms about Greece. And in a sense, Greece's problem is that, and this is something I talked about at the IDSA, is that Greece has been to a large extent shaped its foreign policy in reaction to Turkey. So in a sense, Greece's response to Turkey and the whole doctrine of military agenda is how Turkey acts and how Greece responds and reacts. But Greece should go beyond that framework. In a sense, we cannot shape our own national policy, military doctrines, in response to Turkey's behavior. In a sense, we have a Finlandization of Greece. You remember Finland would ask permission from the Soviet Union when it came to major political decisions or foreign affairs during the Cold War era. So in a sense, we have a kind of Finlandization of Europe, of Greece, when it comes to major security concerns, because Greece always tries to respond to Turkey's behavior. And we need to go beyond that framework. We need to shape our own sovereign international policy that will not just be a response to Turkey's kind of behavior. Another problem which I see with Greece is that Greece has lost its role, its contribution as a major intermediary between the West and different nations. For example, Greece was always in good terms with the Arab world, with Russia, with Iran. Right? So Greece has lost the leverage it had as an interlocutor, as an intermediary between the West, the EU, and those countries. Greece could be very perfect interlocutor with Russia. They're both Orthodox nations. Greece was always close to Russia. Greece was always close to Iran. They have very important national linkages, so Greece would play that very important role of the bridge between Iran and the West. And of course, Greece also would play a very important role in the dialogue within the Arab world and Europe and the West. So Greece has lost its kind of capital as an intermediary, an interlocutor with those nations, and has not been able to articulate its own role, distinctive contribution when it comes to international affairs. And I'm not very optimistic that Greece will be able to kind of articulate a sovereign and solid foreign policy The thing is that Greece is part of NATO, part of the EU, and that, of course, is an important aspect when it comes to Greece. Greece is a small country. As you said, it's a very small economy. Its army is pretty big for such a small country, but still, Greece is not a major power like France, UK, Germany, or Italy, right? So unless Greece tries to articulate its own foreign policy that will go beyond just the reaction to Turkey's behavior in the international arena, I don't think Greece will be able to play a more important role as compared to what it should.
May I ask Justice Satish Chandra? I think we are a little short of time, so we'll ask him. He has written extensively on United Nations and maybe you will may I just give this
No, it's okay. Just I will speak only 2 lines if you are insisting. After the 2 world wars, the United Nations came into existence, and the charter itself is saying the maintenance of the international peace and security. That is the sole objective. And for that one, India is doing wonderful work. Our Prime Minister said this is not the era of the war. He said to the Putin. And similarly, the Greece is also the country who is also not involved directly in this conflict. So both the countries are doing very well for maintaining the international peace and security, and I hope in future it will continue. Thank you.
You're right, but Greece cannot afford to be involved in major conflict. Greece is a small country with very limited resources. India could, because India has a big power, but Greece cannot afford, not because Greeks are nice people necessarily, or because they believe it's big, but we don't have the resources to engage in international conflicts. But that said, I do believe that Greece and India do share this very firm commitment to democracy, international law, and I do think that by rediscovering their civilization capital and potential, they can play a major role in peace building.
Narendra Singh? Huh? Yeah, there's a hand there. Quick questions and comments. We're going to wind up soon.
Just it's a comment, sir. Thank you, Professor, and thank you, ISL, because it was enlightening talk, no doubt. But today is also Biodiversity Day. So, being a person from agriculture and biology, I believe in a motto that is food front for India. So, you said about the classical nature of Indian strategy for wars. So, classical nature of Indian strategy for wars is also healing at the same time while fighting. So, this is a classical thing. And in this present conflict, what India has demonstrated severally is that on one side, you see, UN had to intervene in the Black Sea agreement to extend it by a few days so that the food grains from the war zone could be transported to other part of the world. And India has tried to take on effectively on the sea pirates to give a route to the trade zone in that. So the strategic places of Greece and India are very, very crucial for Europe to have their ambition for the China Sea. So that is why, I mean, strategically you will come closer to that. But as Satish Chandra has told, that our point of healing at the same time should also be taken in the studies. Thank you.
Anybody else? That gentleman, young man? Yes, come on.
Sir, I am a student of ISL. Sir, I am okay, sir.
Speak a little louder though.
Sir, I am being the student of ISL. I am so proud that I am not having such an enormous knowledge to comment on the professor lectures he has given. But I will add from my country that in recent time, what we have did. From childhood days, I have learned that in the essays we have used Greek philosophers and now Indian philosophers too. But recently we have proved it in the COVID times. Like our philosopher is like Sarve Bhavantu Sukhna Sarve Santu Niramaya. Let everybody be healthy and everybody be happy. So for health, we have delivered drugs, vaccines. And for happiness, our country, neighboring country Bhutan, the Buddhist country in Indian subcontinent, is having gross happiness index. So I think happiness and the health, the two things we are delivering from Indian subcontinent as a peace and security. A great example we are putting forward from the ancient times what we have preached, and today what we are delivering. So being a proud Indian, I am just mentioning you, sir, that our India is doing a lot for that, and our Prime Minister is just Honorable Professor Satish said that this is not the era of the war, and this sentence is the healing for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will wind this up. This afternoon I was at a video conference in Brussels on global governance. So I could not stay till the end because I was to come here, but I did send a question regarding the architecture, global governance architecture. We have been collaborating, and we have found that the Security Council is unable to do its duty over the last 3 decades, and it is in a state of stagnation. We have said that permanent membership of the Security Council should be expanded, and countries like India and maybe another dozen countries, maybe South Africa, maybe Brazil, maybe Indonesia and Korea perhaps, which we said, I said at another event as well, should also become permanent members of the Security Council in order to contribute effectively in peacekeeping efforts. Because that's one of the basic reasons for which the United Nations has been established and founded, and they are failing to do that very duty, and it's in a perpetual state of deadlock. So my question to you, comment or a request is, how do you think Greece in our relationship could help and support this request from us and these efforts to get more membership of the permanent, because of your essential your participation or membership of the European Union, as well as in some sense in the Mediterranean as well. And thank you for offering ports. We'd be happy to do that. We would happy to spend happiness, like he said, and help in development. But do consider this question, as you are an expert in this area and you're working on it, as to how we can make that Security Council, of the expansion of it with more permanent members like India and other growing and stronger economies in the world. Thank you.
Yes, of course, the structure of the UN member states is of course a relic of the past, and we need to reconsider certain things. As you said, India's seat is important, and as you mentioned, India has its own distinctive approach to international affairs and global peace. India has an indigenous tradition, legacy of looking at peace and prosperity and happiness, looking at the world as a big family. It's a very important contribution. I think India, in a sense, exemplifies itself with its sheer diversity in size, that the world can be one family, and that we have to tackle conflicts in a more constructive manner and try to avoid conflict, right? And that's, of course, all about soft power, about negotiation, about diplomacy, because India, in a sense, is very vast and complex society. It works on constant negotiations, right? The different states negotiate, different agencies. In Greece, we have 10 million people. We're not able to have a sustainable state. And India has 1.5 billion people, and it still works very well. It has problems, has its own anomalies, but it works pretty well. So this constant exposure to negotiations in India is a very important thing that people can learn from India. And India is, of course, a very good example, a paragon of this model you outlined. I mean, prosperity, peace, and look at the world as one family, right? Trying to avoid conflict. Now, when it comes to the UN question, Greece has pledged to support India, and I think there's mutual understanding when it comes to making decisions about this question. I don't think Greece alone can help to boost India's case, but Greece can, of course, serve again as an intermediary, because Greece is a small country with very limited resources, not a superpower, right? But Greece can convey, can help with this kind of negotiations, with dialogue with the West, especially the EU, when it comes to these questions. And I think that there's a very important capital of mutual trust right now between India and Greece. Both nations are keen to engage in this conversation. I mean, India's trust Greece in a sense. So India could be a reliable partner, unless, of course, Greeks screw them, when it comes to this process.
Thank you. I think Greek has a very strategic position. It is an influential position. It's a great history. I'm sure it will help. The doors of Indian Society of International Law are always open to you to further this cause of friendship between India and Greece. And thank you for this very, very enlightening discussion. Thank you for all of the participation. Thank you so much.
Please come. आप भी आइए. Just Satish Chandra, please come. Professor Bakshi sir. And also, come on, please, the ladies, please come and join us. Please come, Professor. Sir, you met Yes, sir, I will. Please. One more. Thank you. Please carry your flowers. Yeah, sure.
Also, may I give you a number?
Yeah, sure.
927.
All of you are welcome for the IT.
Yes, there are.